everyone, Kristen Ashly here from Pro Wrestling Illustrated for the third episode of our women's wrestling podcast, Get the W. For the third episode of Get the W, we're covering some of the latest news to come out of Stardom, marking our second State of episode, State of Stardom. Chatting about women's wrestling is best done with friends, so let me say hello to our very special guest, appearing now for the second time on Get the W, joshi expert and super fan JPQ. How are you, JPQ?
Okay, I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be talking Stardom, end of the year, crazy year for them. Just excited to be on the show and to talk about my favorite promotion, Stardom.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you again here for another episode. There's a lot to talk about, so let's go ahead and get into it. Stardom had a presser. They had a strategy presentation early December, reviewing basically the past 2 years of business and then looking ahead to the future. And it's what they call the Bushy Road Era. So it starts from December 2019 until now. And that, I guess it makes sense.
Yep.
We'll run through it real briefly. Some of the stuff that they talked about was, profit increase. So from July to September, they had their highest profit ever. Mm-hmm. They, held some first-time events in a long time. So 24 years at Nihon Budokan Hall. Budokan.
Budokan, yep.
Yep. And 26 years at Osaka Show Hall. So, some events that haven't been held there in a long time. Huge deal. They talked about the fact that they're going to be soon increasing local TV broadcasting and expand nationwide. Their followers all across all social media platforms have increased. And so what they're essentially saying is that the Bushy Road Era, it's huge for Stardom. Long time coming firsts, exposure has increased, profits have increased, exposure has widened, and now fandom has increased. What do you make of all of this info in the press? I know there's a lot to process, but do you think Bushiroad has a lot to do with a more successful Stardom?
Oh, yes. Incredibly so. It's not an easy time to be running wrestling shows, entertainment shows, anything where fans need to come out and the gate's important to your overall business model, right? Mm-hmm. And so COVID plays a lot of factors into that. The capacities with regards to attendance play a factor into that. And so not only for them to kind of keep their head above water through this new acquisition in December of 2019, because again, remember, COVID kind of snuck in, February 2020, March 2020 in the States. Yeah. So, for them to take on an entity at the end of December and then to be able to manage the way they have, both through the initial quarantine, the No People Gate show, fans coming back, and then be able to build momentum through 2021. If you were to sit here and say that we took a little bit of a loss in that 24-month period, those people would be telling you they're doing a pretty good job. Right. For them to do not just that, but create a profit and grow their business over those 2 years. That's not something that we're seeing in Japanese wrestling companies currently, right? There's a lot of joshi promotions and there's a lot of puro promotions that are kind of holding on, and a couple that have left the scene since COVID started. And so you look at Stardom and you say, wow, what contributing factors have led to this type of growth, to this type of excitement, to this type of profit? Where it starts is with Bushiroad and the marketing abilities that come with it, right? Being able to translate the Stardom product, right, the entity that is Stardom, into more of a mainstream appeal for the domestic audience, I think is where they've won the biggest, right? It's easy to say, I sit here on a podcast and other joshi people from the West sit around and they say, hey, watch Stardom, # watch Stardom. Hey, watch this joshi promotion, watch TJPW, watch all these. That's one thing because we're invested in wrestling and we're wrestling fans. But domestically, to be able to grow to the number one joshi promotion, and I'll tell you, they've kind of breached that umbrella of quote unquote joshi, right? They're a mainstream global presence at this point, and not like a WWE or even a New Japan, not to that level yet. But I think that they're somewhere in the middle, right? They're a little higher than, say, your Your Seedlings and your Wave Pros of the world, although I love those promotions. They're a little bit higher than those. And they're, underneath like the Dragon Gates and the New Japans and probably the Noahs of the world, right? So, they're doing a good job of separating themselves from their competition on the women's side and creating a brand that is more global in nature. And I think that's directly related to the efforts of Bushiroad.
Yeah, and you have to remember that Stardom's not that old. They're not even a tween yet. They're still like young.
This is their 10th year Annie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
they're still very young. Yeah, but they're doing, but they are doing so well. And, from my vantage point, like not just as a fan, but as somebody who like tries to get interviews, all across the board, joshi has been a lot more accessible than before, but especially Stardom. And I wouldn't say that they were like pushing press out, Western press, but it was certainly harder to get things. And now, PWI has had, interviews with Shuri and Julia and with Utami, and it's been getting easier and easier. And they are clearly reaching out to a Western audience a little bit, I think. It seems to me like, we later in the presser, they have this event, Happy New Year Stardom. It's a 12-hour special that's going to be live streaming on Stardom's YouTube. The Osaka Super Wars show that we'll talk about later, their first match was free on Stardom's YouTube. And that's something that you see like of the AEWs and the WWE. It was never something that you really saw of Stardom before. And now you're seeing, of course, like the crossover. So at this Happy New Year Stardom they talked about, there's going to be some New Japan folk there. So Hiroshi is going to be there. Tomoaki is going to be there. So, now we've got this crossover, and I think Bushiroad really is just trying to approach it as a business rather than a fandom. But it gives us some hope. They even talked about adding Stardom talent to their trading card game, Rebirth for You, which more details then will be at Dream Queendom. But I feel like, it's really, I don't know much about business end on that stuff, but it feels to me like they're trying to reach a wider audience, just from my vantage point, that they're making it a lot more accessible.
They're moving We Are Stardom to a different TV station, I believe. And what's interesting about that is that they're going to focus more on the Western market of the country, right? And so where they have a pretty good foothold around Tokyo, and then going north and or east, the Western side they showed in their infographics are areas of potential growth, right? And so we're going to see them move into that territory, into those territories more. And again, I think, the end of their quote unquote phase one is to really solidify the domestic market, right? A lot of what they're doing as far as accessibility through YouTube, I think you can contribute to the No People Gate when quarantine happened, and then some of the viral things they were doing to try to kind of, when the girls weren't wrestling, to kind of keep them involved and in the minds of fans, as well as, seeing like the Choco Pros and the Dianas of the world, that you can run free wrestling and it can benefit you in other aspects, right? You can use it as a marketing tool to get people to buy pay-per-views and things of that nature. So it's not surprising that we see them kind of go to this pre-show type of format once they started running pay-per-views at the beginning of the year. Now they're just trying to maximize getting as many eyeballs on as possible, regardless of where, right? So I think those are some good things. And I think if they get to the point where they've succeeded domestically at their goals, that maybe we see a bit more expansion into the international markets, right? Maybe some more marketing initiatives or some, feet on the ground with some touring once some things open up. I think that this isn't, I don't think they're at the apex of what their plans are with regards to growth worldwide just yet.
Yeah. And we see, little bits and pieces here. Like now suddenly it's a lot easier to watch a Stardom pay-per-view live.
Yes.
Which, it wasn't that long ago that I was bugging JPQ for his account information. Don't tell Stardom, just so that I could watch a recording of the pay-per-view.
Right, 4 days after the fact, right?
Right. So now we're getting live events. We're getting more English commentary. And which leads us into our next topic, this Wrestle Kingdom announcement. So essentially, the match will be the second on the card for the second night of Wrestle Kingdom, a Stardom match. Typically, at least the last couple of years, there have been Stardom matches, but it's been dark, right? You don't see them.
Right.
So it's a pretty huge deal for Stardom talent. As far as the match itself, straws were drawn at the December 12th show. Shuri drew a blank, which means DDM is out of the game, which is very surprising because personally it feels like they push the members of DDM quite a bit. But maybe that's just me. So we're going to have Mayu Iwatani and Starlight Kid versus Tamu Nakano and Saya Kamitani. What do you like? Do you think that the positioning is a big deal? And what maybe do you expect from this match?
Yeah, so I'm happy that they're doing it. I'm happy that we're beginning to see a little bit more of the migration or the assimilation of Stardom into New Japan a little bit, right? Yeah. And here's why I like it, because I think that when you look at different wrestling promotions in Japan, right? And this goes back a little while, but there is like your Puros and your Joshis, right? And then there's other promotions that run a little bit of both, right? And they've been there and they've been around a little while, right? I mean, I think I've, whether it be Smash shows from 2010s or even Choco Pro now, right? With a lot of what they're doing, we tend to see more intergender matches. We tend to see more men and women sharing the card, right? And so I think with them doing a dark match the first year and a couple dark matches the second year, and then now finally working themselves onto day 2 of the Wrestle Kingdom card, I think that that's just a natural progression that I think makes a lot of sense. Do I ever think that we're going to see a hybrid Stardom, New Japan, entity? No, I don't, because if you have 2 good things, why make them one thing? You know what I mean?
Sure.
But, why mess with your revenue channels? But could I see like a New Japan X Stardom card or like an event? Sure. Right. Maybe that's something that's going to happen down the line, as people get, I don't want to say acclimated because that gives the wrong connotation, but as they get used to seeing New Japan and Stardom talent mixing up. Right. And so I think this is a step in the right direction. I think this is a good progression based off where they were last year. And it's showing that, Bushiroad is willing to, utilize their entities and their properties, right, to their advantage to give the fans, what they want. Because, again, it's good value for someone that's a New Japan fan to get eyes on, a wrestling promotion like Stardom, if you get to see them live. So this is a great move by Bushiroad, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm not going to do the thing that I really want to do and be kind of cocky towards some folk a couple years ago that when I said this would be a really cool idea, when they said it was cultural, because I mean, I don't really know if it's cultural or not, frankly, and I don't think they did either. But I think from a business aspect, this is a good move. It's a good move for both, like you said, and then also for Joshi fans to find a reason to turn into New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom, because Wrestle Kingdom is essentially their biggest show. And if you're not, I mean, I don't want to assume that just because you're a Joshi fan, you're also a New Japan fan.
Right.
Like, you're also going to watch all of the products. Domestically, I mean, it's like you said, right? It's the other way around. It's a reason to push Stardom. But I think, there is probably a small fraction of the fandom that doesn't watch Wrestle Kingdom. That because, we're Joshi fans. I think for personally, at least what I see as somebody in the West who is a feminist, is that I see it just them placing value on their Stardom talent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, they can hold a spot on the card and they can carry it. And nothing against any of these women, but it's probably, they're not even their biggest names necessarily. You know what I mean? I think it's really interesting that they pulled straws.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was a little bit of a work, personally.
Yeah, like it felt a little bit like they were poking at it. Like, well, who wants to go on this card? you know.
I'll tell you, I actually appreciate what you just said as far as that it's a two-way street, because you're right? It is Stardom fans that aren't necessarily New Japan fans getting an opportunity to see what New Japan can do on their biggest stage, as well as New Japan fans who are going to watch the biggest show of New Japan's calendar year get an idea of what Stardom can bring to the table. So absolutely mutually beneficial to both, to your point. Absolutely. As far as who and why Mayu Iwatani, Starlight Kid, Tam Nakano, and Saya Kamatani, it's, to me, I think they've done a good job representing Donna Del Mondo, both with Julia, both with Shuri, as well as representation on the Wrestle Kingdom cards in the past, right?
Yeah.
I look at Mayu Iwatani and I say she's the icon, right? She's the face of Stardom, and she has been, because she's been there since the inception. Starlight Kid, super marketable. She's one of the hottest 2020, hottest 2021. She's had one of the hottest runs in wrestling in 2021, with where she was and where she is now. Tam, Wonder of Stardom champion, with just absolute fire in her storytelling and in her match defenses this year. And then Saya Kamatani's there, up and coming, future, wrestler, main evento type of wrestler. So, these four coming together kind of gives you the past in Mayu and Tam. I didn't say that with all due respect, as well as the future with Starlight Kid and Saya. And so I think it's a really good mix of the Stardom OGs, right? In a lot of ways, since at least, we'll go back to 2019, right? And since at least 2019, you got these 2018 Stardom OGs that are coming in that aren't from DDM, that are going to be able to showcase their talents. And so that's really exciting, because that gives us a little, like, if you're a Donna Del Mondo fan, but you're not a Stardom fan, well, now you might be able to, because you're going to see a little bit more depth with what they can bring to the party.
I don't know how you could be. I mean, I guess you could, but I'm not sure how you could be a Donna Del Mondo fan and not. I mean, not a.
I'm with you. Women of the world, right? Like, that's how can you not get behind that?
Yeah, right. And yeah, I certainly didn't mean that like as a disrespect to those women.
No, of course not.
I just, you think, at least in your mind, the way wrestling works over here, anyways, right? Is like there's some happenings behind stage, and then they pick like the biggest names. So maybe that's just my goggles putting emphasis on that, but I totally agree. And Mayu, I mean, for me, I've heard that name before I heard any name from Donna Del Mondo, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. But I know that they certainly have their idols that they push more than others, and it feels like Shuri's been everywhere.
Yeah, she's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really excited. I already watched Wrestle Kingdom. I'm still fairly new at Wrestle Kingdom stuff, and the names, but I'm finally learning. I deal with it. I stay up really late and I push through it. And so to know that at least one of the days I'm actually going to get a Stardom match, I mean, it'll definitely make that second day worth it for me.
It'll be super cool.
Yeah. Okay. So we've covered some big announcements. So let's chat about the actual wrestling. Osaka Super Wars happened on the 18th, so a couple days ago. It's basically the third and final part of the Stardom Super Wars trilogy. So I think it's Star Wars. And so it wasn't a very long card, but there certainly were some really cool stipulations in this card. First, we had a 3-on-1 handicap gauntlet against Shuri. So Shuri had to fight against Waka Tsukiyama, Lady C, and then Mai Sakari. I just want to touch base on this a little bit, because I feel like, again, this was free on Stardom's YouTube. Mm-hmm. And Shuri, of course, tears through everyone, right? Like, just submission artists, just tap it out, everybody. It seems not only like they want to put Stardom on a spotlight by using YouTube, but also a little bit like Shuri. I mean, way more about what goes on with the storylines and stuff. Is there a reason why Shuri was picked for this gauntlet match, and why maybe it was on YouTube?
Oh yeah, sure. So we got these pre-shows are all about selling the pay-per-view, right?
Right.
But I think we got to look past this pay-per-view as to why this match was on this card specifically. And that's because 2 weeks from now, on the 29th, we're going to have Wrestle Queendom, right? Mm-hmm. And that is the biggest payoff show of the year for Stardom, right? This is 12/29, December 29th. And it is the conclusion, we believe, of Utami Hayashishita and the World of Stardom champion versus Shuri and their epic three match arc that they've been running all year. Yeah. And so you put Shuri in a position to where she's going up against Waka, Lady C, and Mai in the opener on the pre-show to show her dominance against 3 people in a handicap gauntlet, and then the stare down with Utami after the fact to tell the story that these two are on a path of destiny, right? Yeah. And I saw it on Twitter, and I'm blanking on who I saw it from, although I know he saw it from somebody else, but so I don't know who the original source was, but they said that the Shuri match is kind of like just her leveling up, right, prior to her main boss fight in 2 weeks. And so if you ever, JRPG or anything where you have to kind of grind out levels to level your player up and make them stronger before the big boss fight, that's a lot of what this was. And I thought that was a good parallel when I saw it. So, her taking out Waka, Lady C, and Mai really isn't too surprising. And her doing it in a dominant fashion certainly isn't too surprising. However, them doing it on a pre-show for as many people who want to see it as possible, I think that just lends to trying to sell more pay-per-views and or more tickets come Wrestle Queendom on the 29th.
Right. That's good. That's a good point. And she does stare down Utami at the end. And I don't know why, and we can talk about it later, but the way that she went through people and, Utami just celebrated 400 days as champ. It just feels like she's really about to drop that belt. But we can talk about more of that later. Sure. After the match, I'm sure there are names for these assailants, but some masked assailants arrived. Can you just kind of describe what's happening here? Because it was an experience to watch if you haven't seen it before.
Yeah, definitely. And it's Dream Queendom, not Wrestle Queendom, but I will forever make that mistake. No, you're right. It's so the mask assailant. So what you're seeing is a Momo mask, right? And Momo is some computer generated, guy took all the fears of humans and what they don't like, and they put it into a mask. And now they've created that mask and they're coming out with that mask, right? And so the Momo masks, these assailants, I think is a good way of putting it. There was only one. Now there's 2, but there was only one, and that person would come out and attack Cosmic Angels at the time, but then Lady C gets kind of roped into it at the end of every free match on YouTube. It felt like, right, or every opener, the last couple pay-per-views, they would come out and destroy whomever after the match. And so the first question is, well, who are they? Right now that we know there's 2, and we've talked about this in different circles, but what's really interesting is that the Joshi and whole is kind of going through a little bit of a realignment, coming out of COVID and with contracts coming up and things of that nature. People are leaving, people are retiring. These are all new. These are all normal things for Joshi fans, but they're all new in the sense of promotions going under and people signing with other wrestling promotions and things of that nature. And so we're starting to see a little bit of that right now, and that should continue for about the next month. We don't know who they are, right? Although I could tell you one of them. We don't know who they are. And the interesting thing about them kind of bleeding this storyline out over 3 pay-per-views is that they don't really need to tell us anytime soon. They can kind of let the dust settle on this free agency period, realignment, freelancer type of thing. They can kind of let the pieces settle. And then once they've now secured new talent, they can just put them underneath the masks and at a later date reveal them. So who we necessarily think it is now may not be the case a month from now when they do the reveal. However, I think it's a pretty safe bet that one of the 2 people underneath that mask, mainly because her mask fell off, is Mariah Miumi, who was a TJPW wrestler who left around early September, I want to say. She left TJPW, and she's kind of been teasing her reemergence somewhere else. And so for her coming in and putting in the work under the Momo mask would make some sense to me, knowing that she's actively, showing that she's going to sign with somebody. And only being 2 years into her wrestling career really allows for her to mix it up with some also green talent in Lady C, Waka, and Mai. So I think that's a pretty safe bet. Who the second one could be, that's a little bit more of a mystery, and we'll leave it that way. But knowing that we're kind of in this hot stove period of joshi, it really could be anybody at this point.
It's really exciting. Like, I didn't realize really until we talked about it right before this that there were so many shakeups that people were leaving, because then it is sort of like kind of like this weird fantasy booking.
You keep the mask on, it can be anybody.
Right. And that's true too. Like, I appreciate a slow burn. Mm-hmm. I appreciate it rather than the second that they come out, they reveal who they are. Right. I appreciate that it like takes some time over multiple events. And now there's like an addition of one. And I think the use of the Momo mask is just, I think it's great. I think it's awesome. Okay. So then it leads us to our next match, which is basically a unit tournament round 1 match, which also was for the Artists of Stardom Championship.
Yep.
So there's multiple. So we have Donna Del Mondo versus some Marvelous gals.
Yes.
Yes. So the Marvelous crossover happened earlier in the year. Can you kind of give us your thoughts on the crossover? Is this something that you think they like specifically picked Marvelous for? Are they going to maybe do it with other promotions? Do you have any background on the crossover at all?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yes, so Stardom from time to time will bring in different promotions and highlight different promotions in the Joshi scene. We saw this with Sendai a couple years back, and then they went through the Gaijin period where they brought in people from overseas. And then recently, they've been working with Marvelous the last couple of years. And so Takumi Iroha had a great 1-on-1, as I like to call it, with Mayu Avatani in 2019, prior to COVID, that didn't really get the payoff that we were kind of hoping for. Takumi got hurt, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. She went on the shelf for a little while, and then she came back earlier this year. And at the same time, with how successful Stardom's doing, but not being able to pull Gaijin talent from different places the way they have in the past, to be able to kind of subcontract a wrestling promotion like Marvelous helps them short term, right, inject some cash into the Marvelous business, while at the same time utilizing the talent to kind of flesh out different rosters, whether it be for Tag League or the 5-Star Grand Prix, things of that nature. Chikusa Nagayo, who's an absolute legend in professional wrestling in general. Personally, my favorite wrestler of all time. She and Rossi are tight, right? They're good friends. Okay. And so knowing that they have a good working relationship, it's not surprising that Marvelous has kind of, been working with Stardom over the course of the year, as well as it puts great eyeballs on Takumi Iroha, who used to be as part of Stardom in the first class back in 2011. Rin Katakura, who's an up-and-coming future main eventer for him, and then Maria, who is a rookie in their eyes the first couple of years wrestling. But, I mean, her potential is through the roof. So, for them to be able to see what Marvelous brings to the table on a platform like Stardom can only benefit Marvelous. And my hope is that we see a little bit of that talent exchange at the Marvelous shows moving forward to hopefully get their attendance numbers up so they can begin to profit from it on their side as well. So very excited to see them continuing their partnership through the end of the year, as well as anytime you can get Takumi Iroha through your doors, you're doing something right, because she is, ace quality.
And I'll be the first to admit that I probably have seen a few Marvelous shows that have not seen like a lot at all. Mm-hmm. And so while you kind of fangirl over there for Takumi, I was really impressed with Rin.
Yeah.
I am like I'm just like, I was a huge fan immediately. Huge presence, and like anytime that people can show up on a show that I haven't seen before, I'm just a huge fan of that, because sometimes there's so much wrestling to watch. It's like, can we, because we do this all for me, right? It's all for me.
That's
right. Can we just merge this together and make it like, give me the most bang for my buck? So I was really happy to see that they were doing this. But I will say, as great as the Marvelous Gals were, Natsupoi and Himeka were really sort of the focus of this match.
Yeah.
There's been some drama between them. Now, I'm not very familiar with the drama, but it was very clear that those two were doing everything they could to not even be next to each other. Yeah. Do you know what the drama is? Is there like a backstory?
Well, I mean, there's some things going on. I think the long and the short of it really comes down to that they weren't on the same page, right? And as they progressed through their storyline, and I challenge everybody to kind of go back and watch, because what I really enjoy about Natsupoi and Himeka's relationship is one where they're like sisters. They come from Actress Girls together. Natsupoi by way of TJPW. After Actress Girls, Himeka was in Actress Girls and came over to Stardom. And so they have this history. And so they've always kind of had this like little sister, big sister kind of love fest. But there's always that little bit of infighting as well. And that's kind of been, permeating. It's kind of been bubbling over, sure, as of late. And so can they get on the same page? Can they not? I mean, this is the Artist Stardom Champions. We're talking 10 million yen here, and they're kind of at odds leading into this. And so, what was going to happen? Were we going to see an upset? I mean, knowing that they're the champions, you could look at this as like the 1-4 and Cosmic Angels and Stars, the 2-3 seeds, right? Of a little, national championship in a lot of ways. And so, knowing that there's a little dissension in the ranks of DDM with Himeka and Natsupoi not being on the same page and kind of being cross with one another, it was really interesting going into this match. Could they continue their winning ways, knowing that Marvelous was working as a well-oiled machine? And I think that came across in the storytelling in the match.
Yeah, and what I really appreciate about Stardom, which is just, I think, across the board in different types of storylines, is that they don't throw it in your face so much. Like, there are some promotions here that if two wrestlers don't get along, they have to constantly battle in a very obvious fashion. And just the subtlety of like Micah separating the two when the hands were raised. And if you're not paying attention, you probably wouldn't notice.
Right.
But just the little subtleties was like, okay. Because they're sort of doing that, like for example, with Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter. Right. Just these little subtleties are not being so obvious with it. So I can appreciate that. And honestly, the match played out pretty well, considering there was some drama between them. There's a lot of kick to the face. Lots of power bombs. For me, Natsupoi really stood out to me in this match. Now, after I wrote about Shuri and Julia, there was a cross-section of Stardom fandom, specifically of Natsupoi fandom, that was a little upset that she wasn't highlighted. She has quite the following. And I can see why. Like, she has pure star quality. I don't know if it's just because she's, super athletic and she's very emotive, but do you find that she's got this cross section of fans?
Poi? Well, one, I think she brings people over from TJPW because when she was going under Natsumi Maki over there, she had a nice little following and they pushed her pretty well, right? Not crazy, but they pushed her well. Recommend her 1-4 match, 2019 against Sarai before she left. But that's part of it. She does high speed. So who doesn't love, high speed wrestling and the fast quickness and things of that nature. And she's very good at that. But I think you nailed it on the head with the emotion, with the emotiveness of, I don't think that's a word, but the way she emotes when she's in the ring, she plays to the crowd better than anybody else. And I'll tell you, that's an Actress Girls thing, right?
Yes.
when she throws somebody to the ground, she looks up and she's interacting with the crowd. She wants the crowd involved just as much as she is. When she's doing something well, she wants you to know it. When she's hurting, she needs you to know it. And so that type of, I'll tell you, she's one of the best at not just playing to the crowd, but doing it in a way that's palatable to the Western audience, if that makes sense. Like what I'm accustomed to seeing from wrestlers on a hard cam and on cable television, right? I think Natsumi, excuse me, now I'm messing up her different names. Natsupoi, geez. What she can do in Stardom is very relatable to the way I grew up watching wrestling. And I think that's why maybe you were drawn to her at the level that you were.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, maybe not so obviously. Donna Del Mondo wins here. They retain.
Yeah.
I mean, is it obvious? Was Marvelous much assumed to lose? Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that they did the best thing they could by trying to show a little dissension, but at the end of the day, your Artists of Stardom champion who are defending their titles and has 10 million yen on the line, I think that there was enough motivation there to continue their winning ways against a rival joshi promotion coming in to thwart their plans.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what that is in US dollars, but I'm sure it's enough for me to get along with.
I think we would find we'd be able to break bread for sure.
And so then the next match is another unit tournament round 1 match. It's the Stars versus Cosmic Angels. Stars ends up winning. Hazuki, Koguma, and Mayu Avatani. I'm a little surprised, honestly. Maybe I haven't watched Stardom recently enough. I honestly thought Cosmic Angels was gonna pull it out. Did you see Stars winning this?
I did. And the only reason I saw Stars winning this is because there is no conceivable way that you're going to do a ladder match and not have Mayu Iwatani involved in that match. Hashtag spoiler. So the fact that they had Cosmic Angels up, it does it throws a little bit of guesswork into it because, you have the super hot Cosmic Angels. I mean, they were Artists of Stardom champion for almost a year, if not a year. They broke the defense record of the Artists of Stardom championship. Tam has held the title since the hair versus hair match against Julia earlier this year for the Wonder of Stardom championship. So, momentum in a lot of ways is on Tam Unagi and Mina's side going into this. Stars has been in a bit of a rebuild, right? Mayu Iwatani, Jungle, for all intents and purposes, retires from Stardom and she's out. She loses another stablemate in Starlight Kid.
Yeah.
Toedo Tai, she has to bring back Koguma and Hazuki out of retirement, although that's me paraphrasing. And so she's rebuilding Stars. And so for her to be able to find an opportunity to, the team to come together as a whole to take down one of the more, put together factions and Cosmic Angels at this point, I think it goes a long way to solidify what they should be come 2022. Hazuki and Koguma not only are great additions, they're Stardom Tag League champions this year, right? They believe, and their leader Mayu, right, is somebody that again, as the icon of Stardom, is always revered, and so now you've got quote unquote the best tag team outside of the tag champs and Mayu Iwatani, versus Cosmic Angels, and they're all on the same page. And so this became a really interesting matchup because of Mayu and Tam's history and their draw for the not too long ago. It wasn't the pay-per-view before, it was the one before that. That's to be continued. But then additionally, now you've added a little bit of consistency with the tag champs. Stars is on the incline of the factions. And so for them to pull out a win like this, I just think it goes a long way in what they will be come 2022. Yeah.
And it's, so again, it was another well matched competition. I found that the both matches for the tournament were pretty well matched. It's interesting that you say all that because, Cosmic Angels turns out to be pretty sore losers at the end. Mm-hmm. And if you watch carefully, Tom never goes after Mayu.
Nope.
Which is interesting because those two were at war not too long ago. And you would think that she would be the first to really go after her. So that's a little that was interesting too, to know that she wasn't going after Mayu. But yep, Stars, proceeds. And we won't have to go into this because you've sort of been talking about it throughout the episode, but I would really love to do an episode of a podcast where it's just talking about factions. Sure. And, who's on what, and, who is dominant in what areas, and which ones get along with which. And because there's so much history in even just 10 years. I mean, the history really, it really sticks around, as opposed to maybe some Western promotions where it's like you could watch it at any given two Sundays or something and you would have no idea what's going on. But again, really good match. The next one, I'm so excited to talk about this match. It was a Captain's Fall. Loser must change faction. And also Starlight's kids, her mask was up for grabs as well. It was Queen's Quest versus Oedo Tai. The captains were Momo Watanabe and Starlight Kid. Shuri's out there on commentary. First off, I know a lot of people maybe don't like this version of Oedo Tai, and they don't like them when they come out with the weapons, but I love it.
Love it.
I love it when they come out with the weapons, because it's like so cocky and wonderful to me. like this is what you're about to get hit with, and we don't care that you know. And I dig the evil Starlight Kid. I remember when she became evil. And I really dig her. I think she's, like you said, like earlier in the episode, that she's up and coming, man. She's going to be extremely huge for Stardom. Just full of talent. But again, Queen's Quest comes out. It was always on point as a cohesive group. There's no doubt in your mind that they're a group. It sort of seems like there's some history maybe between Starlight Kid and Momo leading up to this match.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they history's an interesting one. Because one was in Stars and one was in Queen's Quest, right? But they've been wrestling together forever. They're Momo's, she might be 21 now and Starlight's 20, right? But Momo started when she was like she came in 2014, so 7 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So what does that put her? 14, 15, and Starlight Kid was a year behind her. Right. So,
yeah.
So again, you think about it, they've been wrestling on and off forever, right? The Starlight Kid versus Izumi, feud is lifelong, right? Mm-hmm. At this point, right? It might as well be a manga. And so, where their history hasn't been directly aligned, in a lot of ways between Starlight Kid, Izumi, and Momo, what you're looking at is the next group of wrestlers that are going to take over Stardom one day, right?
Sure. Yeah.
When Bushiroad took over, Momo was kind of there. She was the true heart. She took over for Io in Queen's Quest. She was the leader of Queen's Quest, and she kind of had this cachet to her coming off the Wonder of Stardom run, where she was kind of like the next ace of the company.
Yeah.
And after Hana and Julia, and then they brought in DDM, and they kind of moved their average age, right, from like lower 20s to mid 20, like 25 to 27 over the course of a couple months. Okay, well, now you look at it and you say, like, okay, well, we have this 18, 19, and 20-year-old and Izumi, SOK, and Momo.
Yeah.
We can just sit on them for a minute,
right,
and then we'll have them for the future, right? And so that makes a lot of people angry, sure, because you want to see your favorite win, and status and Queen Quest leader and future face and all these things that we've perceived in our heads, but then, Bushiroad kind of pivots it on us, but really what they're doing is setting it up for longer term success. Right. And so now you're looking at two of the younger, quote unquote, I don't want to call them up and comers because they've been wrestling forever, but you got the two future stars, right, is a good way of putting it. And, they get to, mix it up in a feud going into year end. That's a win.
Yeah. And I'm glad that they're showing them more. So the match itself, Utami gets eliminated immediately, which I thought was very your champ is just we don't gone. Right, which in a way is kind of interesting because it's like you're not the center of the story, right?
Yeah, right. Get the I don't want to call her a distraction, but kind of, right? You kind of want to get that out of the way early.
Yeah. Like get out of here. There's a lot of shenanigans, especially with the ref, which I will say I didn't expect. I guess I don't see a lot of Stardom events with ref shenanigans, so that was fun. So we'll cut it down to it. Basically, Starlight Kid and Queen's Quest win via DQ from Momo. Woo! Momo hits Azumi and the ref with a chair. So essentially, she's joining Ode Otai by choice. So it's this like incredible heel turn, and like, you know, Momo's cackling and Starlight's cackling, and she essentially says, you know, I'm tired of carrying all of you. Momo says this to Queen's Quest. You know, the Queen's Quest leader is gone, and then from now on, it's the Black Peach of Ode Otai. So do you feel? I mean, I don't know if they have what you would call a heel turn in Stardom, but do you think it was a good call? You know, what happens to Queen's Quest now? I mean, they're down to 2 people essentially. So, you know, their glue, like you said before, is now left.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's one of those ones where, you know, you want to talk betrayals. This is as big of one as you're going to find, right? This is the leader of Queen's Quest. This is the heir apparent handpicked by Io. Leaving her own faction to join Oedo Tai. And there's a lot of parallels here, right? There's depth, and it's stuff that, you know, goes back, right? I think that's really the interesting thing in all this, and it's going to be broken down over time. And I think that, you know, to better serve and kind of flesh it out a little bit more, I think there's some things that I should probably talk to Kevin about doing on the blog, as far as filling in the holes. But I mean, this dates back past the Bushy Road era, right? Like if you were watching Stardom in 2018, you may not even 100% understand some of the parallels that are going on. Like you have to go back a little bit further to Io leaving. But like, for example, like Momo, you know, betrayed, you know, her group initially to go to Queen's Quest. Right.
Okay.
And so of Queen's Quest and all these people being recruited to Queen's Quest, Momo is the only one that actually betrayed somebody to get there. Right. Okay. So this is in her history, albeit she's been in Queen's Quest so long, you tend to forget about it. Right.
Okay.
Her music prior to becoming the face of Queen's Quest was called the Black Peach. And so there's a little bit of foreshadowing there that she could always turn. Right. The fact that, you know, she puts herself in a better situation to vie for the World of Stardom Championship, the red belt, that's currently held by her, you know, former tag team mate, her former Artist of Stardom Championship mate, her former faction member in Utami, Hayashishita, now puts her in a better position to vie for that title, knowing that she's not going against one of her best friends. Right. And so as these things begin to line up, you look at this and you say, you know, this is her losing the faction war and having to join Oedo Tai underneath her own, or against her will, doesn't really fit who Momo is, right? Because she's always kind of been this defiant ass kicker. For her making the decision on her own, like, no. For me to get to my next level, because I've been riding the pine for the last 18 months since Bushy Road has taken over, you know, and I got to start forging a path of my own by making my own decisions and not worrying about the team, right? She takes it upon herself to knock out her number one draft pick the first 2 years of the draft in 18 and 19, and Azumi, her former tag team partner in Azumi, who, again, those two could never get over the hump and win the championship, win the tag team titles together. And so this is just another way of her showing that, you know, she is more than capable of doing what she says she's going to do. It's not Momo holding Queen's Quest back. It's Queen's Quest holding the Black Peach back. And that's what you're going to get going into Dream Queendom and into 2022 is Oedo Tai's Black Peach. And look out, world, because when Dark Peach is pissed off, you're going to know about it.
It was so, like, again, I'm just so used to promotions that throw things in your face,
right?
Or things are leaked, or reports come out, or it's this long-term storytelling that basically shoves it in your face, like someone's going to turn. And I had no idea that Momo was going to do this. In fact, the whole match was so well planned out that you had no idea that she wasn't, she was just doing business as usual. So I thought it was well executed. And I went back online because I'm like, I felt like this was such a moment and I just want to talk to Stardom fans. And some actually were like, oh, well, the ending was pretty predictable because there's this masked Starlight Kid now appearing in the Wrestle Kingdom match for Oedo Tai. Did you think that it was that obvious? Or because the idea was that Starlight Kid would lose her mask.
Yeah. So it's more of a how they did it versus what they did scenario for me. Like a lot of us were talking prior to this match and the build up to this match of great. So Momo's headed to Oedo Tai, just like SLK was headed to Oedo Tai, just like Konami switched and went to Oedo Tai, just like Saki went to Oedo Tai, just like Fuji Kanda went to Oedo Tai, right? Yeah. And so in that aspect, right, it just felt as if, given the situation, it just makes a lot of sense. Then add to it. I mean, again, let's just get a little deeper here. Add to it that Momo is a huge Dragon Gate fan, right? Okay. And when Dragon Gate does these captains fall, loser must change faction matches, that's a huge proponent of the lore behind Dragon Gate, right? Because it's a completely faction-based promotion, and they do these things all of the time where they do like whole faction disbandments and recreations and all this type of stuff. So she grew up a fan of Dragon Gate. So for her to be able not just to be in a Captain's Fall match as the captain, but then on top of that, to be the one that then initiates her own turn by turning on Queen's Quest of all of the factions to turn on Queen's Quest again. Like it just speaks to everything we know about her behind the scenes, that she was game for this. And that's very exciting as well. So to answer your question, yes, certainly we all kind of came to the realization and a lot of us had to find peace with, Momo not being part of Queen's Quest anymore. Sure. However, how they went about doing it, I think, is where the surprise was for a lot of us, because nobody really predicted that she was going to turn on everybody herself, right? And so that, I think, is the OMG moment, right? More so than the actual switch.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because honestly, how many times do masked wrestlers actually get unmasked?
I don't know. That's a lot of money you're giving up when you do it. So that was like my whole pitch was like, I just don't understand how, she's got all these masks and she's been doing this whole thing where she's recreated the mask of the person that she's about to beat. And then after she beats them, she puts that dark mask on them and then does like this little slit across the throat thing.
Yep.
And you're just going to take that money out of her pocket? I don't think so.
And I mean, out of Bushiroad's pocket too. I think it's just merchandise, all that stuff that no longer matters on the shelves. I totally agree. I thought I really, really liked this match. And I was going to say something else about it, but I forgot. But yeah, I agree. I think the way it was executed was really well. And Oedo Tai is like, the ranks are just growing and growing and growing. Soon I will also be in Oedo Tai, I think. Just growing, which actually I'm honestly pretty glad about, because typically, the foreign wrestlers end up on that squad. Mm-hmm. And right now we can't do that. So it's nice to see them growing ranks. I always have this soft spot in my heart for the villain factions, which they suddenly are becoming more of right now.
Right. More fun.
Starlight Kid being just totally into her evil self. I dig it. So then the main event then of the card is the 10 million yen unit tournament final ladder match. So the winners from earlier in the night, Stars and Donna Del Mondo. Suddenly, Himeka and Natsupoi seem to be back friends again. They're like, listen, we're not losing this money. So suddenly they're okay. Whatever happened backstage. I'll say this is the first ladder match that I've seen in Stardom. How common are ladder matches?
They're not common. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like they're really built the same, like the match itself, like as a US ladder match, because like half the time the ladder's not even in there.
Right.
And they're not doing that annoying thing where they slowly climb up the ladder. Almost every single time that they were climbing up the ladder, they were running. So it was awesome. And also, let's talk about Micah's ladder brainbuster.
Yep.
And Mayu's ladder moonsault off the top.
And Koguma's crossbody.
Yeah, and that too as well. Like this ladder is what, 10 feet tall?
Something like that.
I mean, and it's not even like when they were, especially with Mayu, when she was doing it, it wasn't even like both legs, like all the legs were on the ground. It was just sort of propped up against the corner, and they're just doing flips off of it, like, oh, right. Wherever I land is where I land. Yep. Insane spots.
It's yes, and I made mention of this on Twitter, and it's one of my biggest observations from this match, because you're always a little bit leery of 6 people, in this case 2 teams, in a ladder match, right? Yes. Because it can get a little plotting from time to time. It can get a little messy, and there's dead spots where you're setting up ladders or you're rolling off ladders, and exactly. And it's just what's the next big spot type of thing. But I think they've done a really good. So there's 2 things about this match that I really, really hope Western wrestling learns from. And 2, I just think that there were smart decisions. So the first one is I really enjoyed the balance between wrestling as a faction versus faction, and then incorporating the ladder when it made sense, right? We didn't see a lot of ladder being thrown. We didn't see multiple ladders. We didn't see, like crazy setups and tag team moves on the ladders and things of that nature. It was no, we're going to utilize it. And if it's there and it makes sense to use it and it goes with the flow of what we're doing, we're going to do that. But otherwise, we got this figured out. And so I was really happy with the balance. Additionally, the idea of an elimination trios match just makes all the sense in the world for this kind of match, because the fact that we went from 6 wrestlers to ultimately 4 by the end of the match, but that it leaned out, right? Like there wasn't one person who was laying on the ground for 15 minutes while everybody else finished up the match. It was, we're going to eliminate some people and we're going to create less traffic in the ring for some of these bigger spots. Oh, by the way, that's also going to allow people who are seconding to be out on the outside to be able to catch these people as they fall. I think all of that was like really, really well done and smartly laid out, and everybody kind of knew their positions. And not once did I feel like they found themselves in a position to where, they were wasting time. Right. And so very, very good job on the execution from everybody involved there.
Yes. It was a ladder match that didn't feel like there was a ladder being shoved down my throat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like 12 ladders just for decoration outside.
I hate that.
So Himeka pretty much places Natsupoi on the ladder, and they climb together. Like she's literally like dragging her up, which I thought was cute. While Micah is bracing the ladder underneath, safety first. Natsupoi grabs the case. They're friends again. The 2 are hugging at the top. Some top teamwork right there. So Donna Demando wins. Do you think that Donna Demando winning slows the Stars' momentum down at all?
It's a good question, because Stardom Stars has kind of been on this rebuild. And you could make the case in a lot of ways that they had the most amount of momentum coming into this match out of any faction team, given the participants. But at the end of the day, do I really care? And I guess this is more of a trios thing than anything else. Do I really care that Stars isn't the Artist of Stardom champions right now? And the answer is not really. Right. I don't really mind it, because I think that there's bigger and better for those 3 specifically. Okay. And I think that they've got a couple people to add, and I think that they're still in the building process. So where I found peace with this, right, because that's ultimately what it is you got a finished product in DDM, right? And not even Julia and Shuri, but in the other three,
right?
Keeping them strong, keeping them together, and the story of Himika and Natsupoi kind of coming back together. Remember the little moment at the end on the ladder was adorable. Them kind of, coming back together and showing their strength going into the end of the year, I think makes a lot more sense than Stardom, Stars, where they're on the climb back to the top of the mountain, but they're only 3/4 of the way there. So they have a little bit more work to do. They have a little more continuity to build, and they probably have a couple more faction members to add and get the chemistry right. But once they do, I mean, they're already right there. How much farther ahead are they going to be in 2022? I think I can find peace in that type of booking.
Yeah. And then too, it makes sense with what happens after the match. So Cosmic Angels and Donna Del Mondo at Dream Queendom, they're having a match for the Artists of Stardom Championships. So after the match, they agreed to make that match for the titles, essentially. So then it kind of makes sense, like why maybe you'd want to have that.
Absolutely.
Which then leads us into our discussion over what I'm sure is to be one of the cards of the year in wrestling, period. And, just because I could talk forever about all this stuff, but just to save time, nearly every title is up for grabs. The Dream Queendom happens on the 29th. And it's really like their big bang, I feel like, to end the year. Every title is up for grabs except for the Goddesses of Stardom titles, which is currently held by Julia and Shuri, but they're busy on the card. They're busy. So a couple cool matches that, if you're a fan of Stardom, you should just go look up. You should know that the card anyways. Just consider me not labeling off all the matches. Reason enough for you to go look it up.
Right.
But a couple matches that seem pretty cool. So there's a hello and goodbye special singles match.
Yeah.
For Konami and Julia. Do you want to kind of just give the audience background on Konami's departure?
Yeah, so Konami's kind of going through it right now, right? She's got some personal things that she needs to take care of. Nothing specifically stated. However, you could kind of tell over the course of the year that maybe her heart hasn't been in it 100% of the way, right? And so she's going to take a little bit of time. She made it clear that this is not her last wrestling match, that this is a to be continued, right? And that with where she is in her career, that a little time away will do wonders for for her, the longevity of her career, right? And so she's going to go away and she's going to work through whatever she's got to work through, and we all wish her the best for that. But before she did, Julia met her in the ring and said, hey, if you're leaving, I want you before you go. Right. And so Julia's on her way back from injury. Konami's on her way out the door. So we have a special hello and goodbye singles match to say hello and goodbye.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. And also Julia coming back, right? That's always
love it.
A plus. There right after that on the card, there's a 10th anniversary, reunion tag.
Yeah.
So it's Mayu Avatani and Takumi Roba versus Hazuki and Momo.
Yeah.
So why is this match special?
It's just fun to celebrate. I mean, Mayu Iwatani and Takumi Roha are from the first class, right? All the way back in 2011. Maybe Roha is not the first class, maybe 2012 or something along the lines, but they've wrestled together back in the first generation with Saki Kashima. And then Hazuki and Momo debuted a month apart back in 2014. And so you're putting kind of your elder stateswomen against your elder stateswomen,
right.
And so you're doing a match to celebrate 10 years of Stardom with 4 people that in a lot of ways have stood the test of time, right? Both I wouldn't know if I'd necessarily say future and past, but maybe more like present and soon to be future, right?
Sure.
And that's what you're getting with this match. And so that'll be just kind of a fun, tag match between 4 people that have known each other for a very long time.
That will be fun. So then let's go to the main event, because that's really the one that I want. I mean, of course, every single match on this card is going to rock, but I'm really, really pumped for this main event. It's winner takes all for the World of Stardom title, so their big title, and then the SWA World title. No time limit, and it's Utami versus Shuri. So, like, okay, guys, if you're looking at the main event of this card and you've already picked your match of the year, we encourage you to scratch that out, to rip it up, to burn it, and give it up to the wrestling gods, whatever you feel you have to do. Because in my opinion, putting Utami and Shuri in a ring and then saying, we're not going to ring the bell, you just go for it until one of you like probably dies. I mean, the banger that's about to occur. Like, how excited are you for this match?
Well, I mean, considering that we're talking about 65 minutes worth of draws between them this year,
right?
You know, you might see another 65 minutes of wrestling before you finally get to a winner, right? And I like these overarching the yearly type of feuds, you know, and whether this continues or not, we'll see. But the fact that we kind of started the year with the tease of this and we've kind of continued it through the last 12 months and the two times that they have met this year, not only have they been met with high acclaim with regards to the, you know, it being one of the, if not the best wrestling match of the year. And again, and that's universally accepted at this point, right? That Shuri versus Utami, and the 5.5 star double knockout, you know, is universally accepted as being one of, if not the best match, definitely the best women's match of 2021 in a lot of ways. Right now, if you want to sit there and say WrestleMania, that's fine. Like, we can have that discussion, but it's up there in that elite level.
Right.
And that's undisputable. And so now we're asking them to do it again at the biggest, again, the dream queendom to the Wrestle Kingdom, right, of New Japan. Right. We're talking about them to really, you know, not just reset the bar, but push that bar to a different level at Stardom's biggest show in their biggest year in a business perspective. In the biggest feud they've had in a hot second. So, you know, what to expect, I have no idea. The only thing I will tell you is that what you can expect is one hell of a match, and I'm going to guarantee a finish. Right? I'm going to guarantee a winner at Dream Queendom after 65 wrestling minutes of no winner. But expect greatness. I do not know if it'll match the level of their 5.5 star match. However, you know, don't be surprised, to your point, if this is a late addition to the match of the year conversation.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's got me hyped. Do you have a winner? Can I make
You can. So if I'm going dollars to donuts here, I'm going to go Shuri over Utami.
Yeah.
I think we got a story to tell with the Black Peach going into 2021. I need her to knock some into 2022. We need her to knock some names off as she climbs the ranks to get back to the prominence in the main event stage. So excited to see how that all comes together.
Yeah, I'm just like, when I saw the announcements and that we were getting number 3 and that there was no time limit. Okay. So they can't draw. Like, we're gonna get a winner.
We're gonna get a winner.
Yeah, Utami's, like I said, 400 days. She's been carrying that around, and she's really been like, for non, you know, for fans who like really care about women's wrestling, she's sort of been like this tentpole for joshi, to the point where she's reached fans that don't normally watch this stuff. So I think, I mean, I know that I'm not going to get any sleep. That's what I know. Is there any other match on this card that you're particularly excited to see?
Yeah, I'm going to call it the Omega Goon Special, the Wonder of Stardom title match. Tomo Nakano versus Saya Kamatani. I'm hoping that this is Saya Kamatani's first reign with the Wonder of Stardom Championship. I really enjoyed Tamu through 2021. I love everything about her run this year. I think from a storytelling aspect, she tried some things, and where some of them paid off and some of them didn't with regards to storytelling. I think that she went for it, right? And in a world of work rate and wrestling beats any type of storytelling, you know, for someone to consistently commit to trying to tell a story however the build is, right, or however long the build is, for each one of her title matches and doing it in a very unique way. I think Tamu's done a great job with that. With that said, you know, the rubble right now, which is Queen's Quest, right, needs that phoenix to come out of the ashes. And Saya Kamatani is lined up perfectly to add just another accolade to her, or to the Queen's Quest stable, for the Black Peach to come in and rain havoc on. So give me Saya Kamatani, Wonder of Stardom champion in 2022. Send the people home. Well, not happy because Tam is very popular over in Japan, but make me happy going into 2022 by making Zoom the Wonder of Stardom champion.
That's a good point. Like give Queen's Quest really a way to not feel so bad, right? Like and two, right? Momo's gotta, she's gotta have a reason to fight. Well, I'm really excited to see Dream Queendom, and I'm just really excited to see what Stardom has in store for all the fans for 2022. Before we wrap this up, though, JPQ, you have some pretty awesome news yourself, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I think it's time. I think it's time that we talk about it. We've kind of been teasing it on the socials a little bit, and wink, wink, nudge, nudge on Red Leaf, Retrocast, and some other places. But I saved the announcement for Get the W. But I think come January, once the dust settles on the joshi scene a little bit, and we can go into that a little bit more on future episodes. But once the dust kind of settles on the joshi scene, I think it's important that we look at 2022 at Pro Wrestling Illustrated and taking a hard look at what's happening within the scene of joshi. So coming in the new year, you're going to get Just Joshi with JPQ, a new podcast coming to the PWI family that I'm really excited about getting started, because there's just an amazing amount of professional wrestling out there right now in Japan that could be celebrated more. But more importantly, if you're a fan of a specific type of wrestling, there's probably a joshi equivalent to it that can satiate, what you're looking for. So our goal here at PWI in 2022 is to bring that information to your footsteps, or what is it, to your doorsteps in the new year. So very excited to make the announcement that Just Joshi is coming to the PWI network.
Yes, Just Joshi with JPQ, because we love alliteration.
Yes, right.
I honestly can't describe how excited I am for this new podcast. I have DM'd our editor-in-chief several times that I'm just excited because there's so much to cover. And while there's certainly joshi podcasts out there that rock, like I'm not saying there aren't any yet, and we're just going to fill in a void. In my opinion, there aren't enough. And JPQ has always been sort of my go-to for making sure I'm not screwing up names, or I'm not screwing up history, or if I need any advice, or if I just want a match recommendation. His knowledge and passion for joshi is pretty hard to match. So I know PWI is extremely lucky to have JPQ as a new podcast host, and we honestly just cannot wait to hear you spotlight some killer women's wrestling. So let's close it out. JPQ, where can they find you on the socials?
You can find me on Twitter at Big Paws on a Pup, which is where I kind of make my home. The other social medias I'm not as keen on because I'm not as good with their interfaces, but Twitter, you can find me 24/7 again at Big Paws on a Pup.
Yes, follow him. He's always on there. He's constantly tweeting. Just kidding. You can find me on Twitter at Kristen Ashly, where I post all of my work in women's wrestling. Be sure to also pick up the latest PWI at pwi-online.com or on newsstands, and follow them on Twitter at official PWI. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time.